Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Max Results online lockdown program. So I understand you're in for a bit of a hard session tomorrow, so I thought today might be a good opportunity to look at some other aspects of your new home lockdown situation that we might be able to help you out with. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Anne. I'm an exercise physiologist, and one of my areas of interest is helping people improve their movement to help improve their function, but also to help manage any pain that they might be experiencing. So that's what brings us to today's topic of ergonomics. So most of you have probably had a change in your work situation. So if you're like me, most of my work is now being done over the phone or over a screen. Others, you may have just had to relocate your office space to a makeshift home office. And we're going to be looking at ways that you can help improve your productivity and help manage any or prevent any pain that might start to develop if you're using a less than ideal setup. So some things that you need to be aware of when you're working in general, but particularly if you're working from home, there's 3 points that we need to be aware of when you're doing any manual handling. Now, when I say manual handling, I'm not meaning lifting heavy boxes and things. It's any time that you're interacting with a physical object. So pens, keyboards, all of those things count. And those things like typing and things aren't going to be harmful unless you're adding additional harmful aspects like if you're in an awkward posture, if you're doing it for a prolonged period of time, or if it's repetitive. So the definition of those things, so a repetitive task is considered to be anything that you're doing twice or more in a minute. So typing is definitely a repetitive task. And if you think about what you do over a day and accumulating those tasks throughout a day or a week or a month, you can see how the potential hazard will increase as the more often you do these things. So a repetitive task is more than twice in a minute. And a sustained posture is anything that you do for at least 30 minutes in one effort or accumulating 2 hours over your workday. So if you think about an office, a desk-based job, you're looking to be sitting behind your desk for probably 5, 6, maybe even 7 hours at a time. So again, if you think about how that accumulates over time, you can see how something that would otherwise seem to be fairly passive can actually end up being quite harmful for you if you're not in a good setup. So we're going to have a look at the way that we can improve the way you set up your station, but also some ideas for how you can help prevent anything going wrong down the track, but also some movements and things that you can do during the day to help keep you in a good posture. All right, so when we're talking about good posture and desk setup, we're really talking about ergonomics, and loosely put, that's looking at the business of trying to hold yourself upright. And so really what we're aiming for is reducing your energy expenditure. So the less energy you're expending, the less energy you're expending, the less likely you are to become fatigued, because we know once you become fatigued, your risk of injury increases quite greatly. So the less energy you can expend, the better. Now, if you've got a nice proper desk chair like this, where you can adjust all the angles, this is going to be the best way of you helping to manage any poor postures that you might get yourself into. So when we consider a seated posture, we're looking at your feet being flat on the ground, your back being fully supported. We're looking for your hips to be at about 100 to 120 degrees, and we're looking for your shoulders and your neck to be in a neutral position. So with a chair like this, where you've got lots of options to move it up or down, you can lean the backrest back, or you can tilt the bottom of the seat forward a little bit to get that nice open hip angle. And then you can adjust the backrest up and down so it fits into your low back. But if you're just working from home and you haven't got an option like this, I'll show you some things that you can do just using a normal kitchen chair. So if I take a seat in this chair, and I sit all the way back into the chair. My back's fully supported, but there's no lumbar support in this, so I'm a bit rounded. My hips is probably in an okay position, but from here I can't actually touch the ground. So I would either need to use a footstool and use maybe a rolled up towel or something behind my back. Or another option is, if I scoot myself forward on the seat, I can now have my feet solid on the ground. I can get my pelvis into a more neutral position, and then I can relax the rest of my upper body. So as you can see here, I don't have a backrest, but all that would mean is me needing to put a couple of pillows in behind me, and I would be able to relax into that position. So getting back to what I was saying before about reducing energy expenditure, if I sit myself up in this position, neutral pelvis, shoulders stacked over hips, my feet on the ground, and I relax my posture, I slump a bit, but I don't really go anywhere. Compared to if I jump my chin forward and round through my shoulders, if I then relax this posture, I'm going to fall over. So that means that this position is actually using quite a lot of energy to hold myself here. So even though we've got the technical aspects of angles of hips and distances and things, it really comes back down to what position you can get your body into that's going to reduce the amount of effort and energy expenditure. So like I said before, feet on the floor, pelvis in neutral with a lumbar support, shoulders neutral, chin tucked in, and your hips just slightly open. So next up, we need to look at what you do with your screen. So ideally, your screen will be about an arm's length away from you. You want the top of the screen to be roughly in line with the top, with your eyes, or slightly below. So you can see here I've got a laptop. Laptops are really only designed for temporary use or short-term use. So if you've got access to a desktop, that's going to be even better for you. If not, but you have access to a separate keyboard, that's probably going to be better. So you can adjust the two elements to suit you best. But if you're just using a normal laptop, what you really need to look for is finding a happy medium between what's easy to look at and what's easy to type with. So like I was saying, about an arm's length away, you want it slightly below eye level, and you do want to be careful that there's not too much glare or no direct light on it, so that you're not having to strain your eyes to see what you're looking at. And then next up is keyboard. So the hardest part about this is getting your shoulders into a neutral position. So as soon as you start reaching or rounding, you're going to potentially start aggravating your neck or your shoulders. So by keeping your keyboard nice and close to you, so your elbows are resting at your side, and then your fingers should be falling onto the middle line of your keyboard. So with me, I probably need to boost up a little bit higher. So not only do I have to have a cushion behind me, I probably need a cushion under me and a footrest in this position. So again, it's not ideal, but it's what we're working with because of the situation that we're in. So of course, if you've got the separate element of a keyboard, you'll be able to put it at a position that might be more comfortable, and you've still got your screen at a preferred distance. So it might be something, if you don't already have, it might be something worth investing in. Then the other thing with your keyboard is whether you prefer to have your hands free and free type, or whether you prefer your arms resting. And that's really whatever you prefer to do. Just keep in mind, if you do prefer to be free typing, you need to be up a little bit higher again. And then with your wrists, we want your wrist to be as neutral as you can manage, so not extending or flexing through your wrist, and making sure side to side you're keeping that fairly neutral as well. So as you can see with my setup here, my chair's a little bit too high, it's not very supportive. My table is a little bit high for the chair that I've got, and I can't quite get a perfect distance between my screen and my keyboard. So then the other thing that we need to do is thinking about going back to those awkward postures or the prolonged postures, and seeing what we can maybe do to minimize the impact of each of those. So really that means just mixing up your position throughout the day. So if you consider an 8-hour workday, if you've got 4 different positions and you're moving around every half hour, you should be able to keep yourself within those thresholds. So for me, I would go from this position, sitting back in my chair. I would then be able to scoot my chair back, use a cushion to support my back. I got position number 2. Then from here, if your knees are okay, you can spin yourself around. You can maybe use a coffee table or use your chair. You can then change your position once you're down in your kneeling position. And then of course you've got the option of a standing desk. And so this allows you 4 different options within one tiny little space. And then if you consider all the other spaces that you've got in your house or your apartment, to be able to move around to adjust to the temperature each day or the light during the day, but also different heights and different positions that you can get yourself into. Because remember, really what we're aiming for here is keeping yourself within the thresholds of awkward postures, prolonged postures, or repetitive tasks. All right, so from here, we might have a look at some exercises that you can do throughout the day at your desk to help manage any postures that you're getting yourself into or returning yourself out of awkward postures. So for most people that are doing a desk job, it often is things like headaches or a tight neck or sore shoulders that are going to be the first thing that you notice. So to help manage things like headaches or neck pain, what we want to do is think about a chin tuck. So this position here, it's getting us out of that aligned position where we're having to use a lot more effort. So if we think about a chin tuck, where the back of your head is pushing towards the back of the room, and you're thinking about stretching your neck up nice and tall. So all you're really trying to do there is create a double chin. So you just relax, chin tuck, pause, and release. Chin tuck, pause, and release. So doing that half a dozen times every half hour or so, it will help you to get out of this forward trunk position that you might sort of find yourself in after a little while. And then from here, we're going to move to some more movements. So tucking your chin in and then pendulum to the side, back to center, pendulum to the side. What I want you to think about with this one, it's not about trying to stretch your traps here. So we're not bending through your neck. It's about trying to hit these little muscles at the base of your spine. So it's just tilting from your head. So your head, trying to move your head separate from your neck. When you're doing this, making sure you're in that slight chin tuck so you can go side to side. And you're hitting these muscles up here. And from there, you can add different movements. So chin tuck, rotating to the side, and then you can tilt your head forward or backwards to try and find the point that your neck needs to try and stretch right up at the base of your skull there. All right, so our next movement is going to be moving down our spine a little bit more. So if you're sitting at your desk, a lot of you probably do this one already. It's just stretching forward, but we also want to be stretching backwards again. So if you're using a keyboard or something and you're working in front of you, you're more likely to get tight through your pecs. So we want to make sure you're stretching out. If your shoulders can allow you, you can tuck your hands behind you, squeezing back. But what we're aiming for here is making sure that that mid-back, your mid-spine, is moving as much as you can get it to move. And then from here, if your shoulders allow you to, you put your hands behind your head like you're about to do an ab crunch, and then pulling your elbows back and pushing your chest forward. So here we're trying to, where this position is trying to get some movement through your back, this one's trying to work those muscles down here. So you might feel a little bit of a squeeze or a little bit of a burn just below your shoulder blades between your spine, at your spine. Now if your shoulders don't let you get up into this position, instead you can have your elbows resting at your side, your hands flat like you're carrying some trays, and then turning out to the side. So you're still getting that movement through your mid-spine, but it's just a little bit easier on your shoulders. A bit like if you're at the gym and you're doing your pull-aparts. So really think about at that end range, squeeze, squeeze, and release. Now if you have access to a wall, the other way that you can work through those mid-back muscles, stand yourself right up against a wall, so that chin tuck so your head's flat, pushing the backs of your hands into the wall, squeeze, pause, and release. Squeeze, pause, and release. And then you can find another position, squeeze, pause, release. And then from there, just to challenge yourself and see how well you can control your shoulders as you're moving, pushing your palms just gently into the wall, sliding up as far as you can, but thinking about pushing your shoulders down as you lift your arms up. So I want you to try and avoid any hiking. You're pushing down through your fingers and then out as far as you can. And as soon as either your shoulders hike up or if your hands come away from the wall, you go back down to the start and start again. So pushing your hands down into the wall, fingers reaching towards the floor, up as far as you can until you start to lose your position, and then back down again. All right, so next up we're going to move down your spine into your low spine a little bit more. So this one's going to be good for those of you with maybe stiff or tight backs or any disc issues. What I do want you to keep in mind, if you do have anything going on with your back, I want you to make sure you're just going within a range that's comfortable. So what you're trying to do is, so again, I'm getting myself back into that stacked position, that energy efficient position. So this is neutral for me. So what we need to try and train is getting yourself in and out of a neutral position so you can find your neutral position a little bit more comfortably. So all we need to do here is think about tucking your tail between your legs and then poking it out the back. Tucking your tail between your legs and poking it out the back. Now when you're doing that, I want you to be really careful that you're not shifting through your trunk and that you're not pushing and pulling with your hamstrings to try and create that movement. I want that movement to be coming from your core. So squeezing under and then pushing back. Now the slower you do this, the harder it's going to be. So think about challenging yourself with how smooth and how slow you can create that movement. Now you can also do this one standing up, which is probably for some people a little bit more comfortable. So slightly bent through your knees, tucking under, driving back. And now because you're a bit freer, you can do more of a full circle if you can manage that as well. Now this is going to take a little bit more coordination and you might notice that it kind of jerks and jumps around a little bit. It'll be something good for you to practice if that's the case. So you're increasing that coordination through your back. Now the last one that we're going to do for is to try and get your glutes working. So if you're sitting down a lot, your glutes are going to be on stretch and so they might not be working as properly or as effectively as they should be. So what we're going to do is just a kick back. So this is similar to if you were down on the floor doing a glute bridge. So if you've got the space, by all means do a glute bridge. The thing I want you to think about with this is when you're doing it, if you kick back and pause and pause and pause, I want you to think about where you're feeling the burn. Is it in your glutes or is it in your hamstrings? So if you're noticing in your hamstrings, I want you to think about, instead of kicking back through your foot, I want you to think about extending through your hip. So squeezing from your hip to see if you can get your glutes to activate. If you're still having trouble with that, lay yourself down on the floor. If you've got someone with you, have them put one hand on your hamstring and one on your glute. If it's just you, just try and reach around and have one hand on each or one finger on each. And then just to give you a little bit more of a cue, see when you extend back, do you feel your hamstring switching on first or do you feel your glutes switching on first? So just seeing what you can feel and then trying to train yourself into switching glutes on first. Now if all else fails, of course you can squeeze your bum and then extend, but really what we're trying to do is get into the habit of your muscles switching on in the correct order. So glutes and then hamstrings to help. So the exercises that we went through was the chin tuck and then the chin tuck and the rotation. We went through stretching and extending through your mid-spine. We did, what else did we do? We did the elbows up and extend, or the hands down by your side and rotating out. And then the pelvic tuck and then the hip extension. So those things, if you were to do them all together, are probably only going to take 5 or 6 minutes. Every sort of half an hour to an hour. Remember, the key things that we're looking for to help manage any pain moving forward is keeping your postures to less than 30 minutes at a time and trying to minimize your repetitive tasks. So one thing I would recommend, if you're noticing with your setup or with the activities that you're doing throughout your workday, if there's anything in particular that you can really identify as being harmful, it might be an idea to speak to your manager. They'll be able to do a risk assessment form, or fill out a risk assessment form, and then from there you can either determine appropriate activities or maybe looking at some aids or a change in your desk or something. So remember, we're looking at not necessarily helping what you're doing today or tomorrow, but preventing any injuries down the track, because we know about a quarter of the workforce at some stage will have a work-related injury. So if you found anything today helpful, please share this information around. If you would like more information or something more personalised, get in touch with us. We'll be able to sort you out with that. But otherwise, a little bit of homework for you to figure out what you might be able to do to figure out a better setup for yourself. And then good luck with that.